and welcome to Indus News Live from Islamabad. I am Hira Mustafa and these are the headlines. In India, the state of Kerala has moved a resolution against the Modi government's contentious farm laws. The state chief minister says the reforms were not only anti-farmer but also pro-corporate. Meanwhile, the centre has accepted two demands of the farmers, but the repeal is yet to be discussed. But the unions have decided to continue their protest till all demands are met. China has slammed the U.S. for sailing two warships through the sensitive Taiwan Strait. The Defense Ministry denounced the trip as a provocation and a show of force. This was the 13th sailing through the strait by the U.S. Navy this year, second in this month alone. The global deaths from COVID-19 have surpassed 1.8 million with more than 82 million cases. Meanwhile, a highly infectious variant first discovered in Britain has now been detected in the U.S. state of California. The death toll in the United States has crossed 342,000 with nearly 20 million cases. And in Pakistan, the virus claimed 58 lives and infected nearly 2,500 people overnight. The nationwide tally of deaths has crossed 10,000 with cases above 479,000. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has signed the post-Brexit trade deal with the EU soon after it got approval from MPs. The deal sets out new trading terms between the two sides and is due to come into effect on January 1st. House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle says Queen Elizabeth has granted royal assent to the agreement. And in football, Atletico Madrid have ended the year atop La Liga after beating Getafe 1-0. Luis Suarez's first half header won the game for Madrid. At 35 points, Atletico are 2 points clear of rivals and defending champions Real Madrid. Well, these were the headlines. News in detail coming after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in detail. In India, the state of Kerala has moved a resolution against the Modi government's contentious farm laws. The state chief minister says the reforms were not only anti-farmer but also pro-corporate. He said the country was witnessing one of the most iconic protests by the farmers. The chief minister said Delhi came up with the laws at a time when the farm sector was facing challenges. Meanwhile, the centre has accepted two demands of the farmers, but the repeal is yet to be discussed. The two parties will meet for a seventh round of talks on January 4th, but the unions have decided to continue their protest till all demands are met. The Pakistan Army says a soldier has been martyred in India's ceasefire violation at Hoirata sector along the line of control. The military's media wing said the army gave a befitting response to the unprovoked Indian ceasefire. It said Indian forces deliberately targeted the civilian population. It said the army also shot down an Indian quadcopter that violated Pakistan's territory over Hot Springs sector. 16 Indian quadcopters were shot down by the Pakistani forces this year. In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops have martyred 3 more Kashmiri youths in a fake encounter in Srinagar. The occupation forces also destroyed several houses in the area. Nearly 300 Kashmiris have been killed by Indian troops since New Delhi revoked the occupied valley special status in August 2019. The valley has been under a crippling curfew and communications blackout since then. Pakistan has repeatedly called for global action on the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. China has slammed the U.S. for sailing 2 warships through the sensitive Taiwan Strait. The Defense Ministry denounced the trip as a provocation and show of force. It said Chinese ships and aircraft destroyed USS John S. McCain and USS Curtis Wilbur. Beijing added that its military was prepared to respond to all threats and provocations. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy says the warships conducted a routine transit following international law. It said the transit demonstrates the U.S. commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. This was the 13th sailing through the strait by the U.S. Navy this year, second in this month alone. The U.S. military has flown nuclear-capable B-52 bombers over the Middle East to deter any potential adversary. In a statement, the U.S. Central Command said the flight underscores commitment to regional security. Chief General Frank McKenzie said the flight proves the U.S. ability to deploy combat power on short notice. He said Washington is ready and able to respond to any aggression directed at America or its interests. This was a third bomber deployment by the U.S. in the Middle East in the last 45 days. Tensions are high amid concerns Iran may retaliate to mark the first anniversary of Qasem Soleimani's assassination. Iran has accused UK security company G4S of playing a role in killing of General Qasem Soleimani. The top Iranian commander was killed by an American drone strike in Baghdad in early January this year. Iran's Prosecutor General spokesperson Ali Al-Qasi said G4S provided security at Baghdad airport. He said as soon as Soleimani and his comrades arrived at Baghdad airport, employees of G4S provided information to the U.S. Meanwhile, in a statement, G4S has rejected the claim as completely unfounded speculation. The statement said G4S had no involvement in the attack on Soleimani or Abu Mahdi al-Mohandes. The global deaths from COVID-19 have surpassed 1.8 million with more than 82 million cases. Meanwhile, a highly infectious variant first discovered in Britain has now been detected in the U.S. state of California. The death toll in the U.S. has crossed 342,000 with nearly 20 million cases. Details in the following report.
The claims of achieving herd immunity against COVID-19 during the first wave of the pandemic have turned out to be botched, as even after a year, rarely a day goes by when one country or the other does not report its highest yet cases or deaths. Brazilian syringe and needle makers warn the country's vaccination program is at risk, as the government set auction prices too low and failed to draw bids for enough syringes. The U.S. has reported over 125,000 coronavirus-related hospitalizations, highest since the pandemic began. A nurse in California tested positive more than a week after receiving the Pfizer vaccine, but the company says the body needs more time to build up protection. The U.S. top infectious disease expert says the country may return to normal life by fall next year if states diligently vaccinate population.
If we do the kind of vaccines through April, May, June, July, that by the time we get to the early fall, we will have enough good herd immunity to be able to really get back to some strong semblance of normality. Schools, theaters, sports events, restaurants. I believe if we do it correctly, we will be there by the early fall.
Turkey has received its first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from China. Italy reported over 16,000 new cases after the Premier ruled out mandatory vaccinations. An old home in Paris received first shot of the vaccine amid criticism of France's slow start to its vaccination campaign. As England extends its toughest restrictions, Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the government is forced to impose curbs because of the pace of the spread of new variant.
On the downside, there is a new strain of the virus which is spreading much faster and surging across the country. And we've seen a 40% increase in cases in England in the last week alone, almost 15% more patients in hospital, more than at the peak of the first wave. And yesterday, sadly, we recorded almost 1,000 deaths across the UK.
China has approved a vaccine developed by Sinopharm, while a conditional approval was given to the national biotech group. Meanwhile, Australia will ring in the new year with harsher restrictions as the country's two largest states battle to quash first clusters in their capital cities.
U.S. Senate leader Mitch McConnell has declined to schedule a swift vote to boost coronavirus aid. The move shut the door on President Donald Trump's push for $2,000 relief checks.
Mitch McConnell said the bill approved by the Democrat-led House has no realistic path to quickly pass the Senate. He said hiking aid checks will be another fire hose of borrowed money. The senators said the money will go to plenty of American households that just don't need it.
But more broadly, here's the deal. The Senate is not going to split apart the three issues that President Trump linked together just because Democrats are afraid to address two of them. The Senate's not going to be bullied into rushing out more borrowed money into the hands of Democrat rich friends who don't need the help.
Meanwhile, the Senate voted 80-12 to begin a debate to override Trump's veto of a defense policy bill with another procedural vote due on Friday. The House of Representatives already voted overwhelmingly to overturn the veto. If successful, the effort will lead to the first veto override of Trump's presidency. A new Congress is set to be sworn in on Sunday amid the ongoing political battle.
Now moving on to Pakistan, 58 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's toll to 10,105. The health ministry reported over 2,400 new cases overnight. Officials say out of over 479,000 countrywide cases, more than 435,000 people have recovered. The National Command and Operations Center says the number of active cases has crossed 34,000. The Punjab province accounts for most of the deaths with just over 4,000 lives lost, while Sindh has reported over 3,500 fatalities yet. Saudi Arabia's King Salman has formally invited Qatar's Emir to the GCC summit scheduled for 5th of January. Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has not yet confirmed whether he will attend the summit in Saudi city of Al Ula. This comes amid regional efforts to resolve the dispute that pitted the Gulf neighbors against each other. Riyadh and its allies cut ties with Qatar in 2017, accusing it of backing terrorism charges Doha denies. In addition to Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the GCC includes Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, and the UAE. Earlier, Saudi Arabia's cabinet said it wished for a successful summit to enhance cooperation between the member countries. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson had signed the post-Brexit trade deal with the EU soon after it got approval from the MPs. The deal sets out new trading terms between the two sides and is due to come into effect on January 1st. House of Commons Speaker Lindsay Hoyle says Queen Elizabeth has granted royal assent to the agreement. In a specially convened Parliament sitting, Prime Minister Boris Johnson said London will work with the EU to reshape the British economy. The Parliament overwhelmingly backed the agreement in a high-speed process, but opponents say the country will still be worse off than it was while in the EU. The post-Brexit trade deal will take effect at midnight today. In Venezuela, the Supreme Court has ruled a move by the National Assembly to extend its term as invalid. The ruling paves way for President Nicolas Maduro to take charge of the body next month. The court declared any action by current legislators to continue or extend their status to be lacking in judicial validity and effect. The opposition viewed the top court's decision as beholden to Maduro's dictatorial regime. Meanwhile, the U.S. has blacklisted two Venezuelan officials over a trial of former executives of American refiner Citgo. In a statement, the Treasury Department said it banned Supreme Court Judge Lorena Cornales and the government's prosecutor Ramon Torres. More news stories coming up after the short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The last full moon of the year cast its glow over Greece, lighting up festive towns and shores. In the coastal town of Rafina, the full moon added a special touch to Christmas decorations. NASA says the full moon, known as the cold moon, began to appear on December 29 in some countries. It will continue to appear full until December 31st in others. The Old Farmer's Almanac website says a Native American tribe, Mohican, also refers to the full moon as a long night moon. It is the closest to the winter solstice and shines above the horizon longer than most full moons. New York City is preparing to usher in 2021 with a traditional Waterford crystal ball drop over Times Square. This year, New Year's Eve will be a scaled-back virtual event because of the pandemic. The giant ball had a test run on Wednesday atop One Times Square. A range of colorful lights illuminated the ball as it rose to the top of a pole where it will rest until New Year's Eve. The ball has 2,688 Waterford crystal triangles, and each year Waterford adds a few new triangles. Organizers say the ball also has a palette of more than 16 million colors, which creates a kaleidoscope effect. In Uganda, a 7-year-old has become the talk of the town for his immense knowledge of aircraft and budding flying skills. His love for talking to the air and adoration for Elon Musk might earn him a ticket to Mars someday. The report has the details.
Wonder kid Graham Shima is making headlines in Uganda and beyond for his admiration for aviation. A lover of mathematics and science, the student has already flown as a trainee 3 times on a Cessna 172. He says he wants to be a pilot and an astronaut and someday travel to Mars.
In future, I want to be a pilot and an astronaut. I was interested in astronomy because I wanted to go to Mars and the moon. Our moon is called Lunar Moon.
Shima's curiosity for flight was piqued by a freak incident. As a 3-year-old, a chopper flew so low to the ground that it blew off the roof of his grandmother's house while he was playing outside.
A police Cessna knocked our grandmommy's house, rentals. So I was at work, and that time my son used to live at my judge's place, at my grandmom's place, because I never had a maid at that time. So I was at work. They called me. It happened when my son was outside. He spotted everything, what happened. So from that day, my son got much interested in aviation.
Last year, Shima joined a local aviation academy and began lessons at home on aircraft parts and aviation vocabulary. Shima has flown as a co-pilot between January and March before the COVID-19 pandemic stopped his practice. He has since been focusing on aviation theory and immersing himself in videos about space exploration.
Now moving on to the business stories, the US says it will raise tariffs on European Union products including aircraft components and German and French wines. This is the latest twist in a 16-year battle over aircraft subsidies between Washington and Brussels. The Office of the US Trade Representative did not say when the tariffs will take effect in its statement. The USTR said EU calculated tariffs unfairly against the US, allowed by a September World Trade Organization ruling. It said Brussels needs to take some measure to compensate for this unfairness. Earlier, Emily Haber, Germany's ambassador to the United States, urged quick action to resolve the dispute. She called it a distraction from bigger issues that require joint action, such as climate change and the pandemic. Belarus has received the first tranche of the Russian state loan amounting to $500 million. In a statement, the Ministry of Finance said the money has been transferred to its account. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin granted a $1.5 billion loan to Belarus counterpart Alexander Lukashenko. The Kremlin said the loan is aimed at boosting trade cooperation among the countries. Shares in Asia Pacific are trading mixed as multiple markets in the region closed early for New Year's Eve. South Korea's Kospi is leading the gains today, adding nearly 2%. Mainland Chinese stocks are trading higher, with both Shanghai Composite and Shenzhen Component adding over 1%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index has also gained over 0.25%. Meanwhile, Japan's Nikkei 225 and Australia's ASX 200 have edged below the flat line. And And in football, Atletico Madrid have ended the year atop La Liga after beating Getafe 1-0. Luis Suarez's first half header won the game for Madrid. Atletico's win comes during manager Diego Simeone's 500th game as in charge of the club. At 35 points, Atletico are 2 points clear of rivals and defending champions Real Madrid. Meanwhile, in another fixture, Real Madrid put off a disappointing show as they drew Elche 1-1. Luka Modric opened the scoring for Real only to be equalized by a fiddle second-half penalty, earning his side a point. Real Madrid follow leaders Atletico on second place with 33 points. In the English Premier League, Fulham's away fixture at Tottenham Hotspur has been called off due to a COVID-19 outbreak at the West London club. In a statement, Spurs said Fulham have requested a delay on the grounds of several positive cases. The match is the third in the English top flight to be postponed due to COVID-19 cases. Newcastle United's trip to Aston Villa was also called off, along with Monday's match between Everton and Manchester City. In the Scottish Premiership, defending champions Celtic trashed Dundee United 3-0 at home to stay close to the top. Ismail Assor's opening goal in the 23rd minute was doubled by David Tumble before half-time. Odsonne Edouard added another for Celtic, sealing a victory in the 75th minute. In another fixture, Celtic's arch-rivals Rangers toppled St Mirren 2-0 to extend their lead on top of the table. Rangers retained their 16-point lead after avoiding a repeat of their league cut defeat to St Mirren. Now it's time to have a look at the weather update across the globe. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.